It's just the most alpha-packed conversation we'd had.
So we're early as hell in this, basically.
They're gonna be like, wow, this is really, really helpful. Thank you, Jim. I'm not doing anything about this, except I might tweet about it.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Roll Up. Welcome to a Chain Abstraction Palooza, where we just wrapped up an epic one-day marathon in the heart of New York City, diving deep into chain abstraction with some of the top teams in crypto. Trust me, this series is packed with insights, laughs, and a few surprises you won't want to miss. Shout out to Omni Network for helping to put this together with their upcoming mainnet soon, targeting the interoperability and UX problem that we're currently facing in the Ethereum and modular ecosystem. We really enjoyed this series and looking forward to putting all this content out there. Let's jump right into today's episode after a quick word from some of our awesome partners who make this possible. Welcome to the Ignition, Mantle's newest campaign to liberate the growth power of Bitcoin. FBTC Ignition has officially begun with a total token supply of over 2,000 FBTC with a TVL of over 150 million. Right now, you can go on the FBTC website to see all of the featured campaigns, staking opportunities, and liquidity pools where you can utilize FBTC on-chain today for some of the best yields available on L2s. The Ignition Sparkle campaign can be found at fbtc.com/ongoing-campaign.
Welcome aboard on our journey into the singularity. This is the endgame roadmap for Frax and Fraxtal, the new L2 out of the Frax ecosystem that is totally based on fractal scaling. Fraxtal is a modular L2 blockchain built by Frax with modular and fractal scaling in mind. Fractal scaling is based on the Mandelbrot set of fractal images, and it explains how L2s become L3s and the entire app chain lifecycle goes through its evolution. The Frax ecosystem is made of some of the top builders in the space and has stemmed from its OG days of the Frax stablecoin. It is now in the LST space, the LRT space, and this Fraxtal L2 joins the existing suite of Frax products, including Frax Swap and Frax Lend. You can see Frax Ferry, the bridge to go from any chain, Arbitrum, Optimism, or mainnet into the Fraxtal mainnet, bridge your tokens, and bring your Frax assets into the Fraxtal ecosystem. Join today to get the best out of Fraxtal. You are still early. Join today, take part in our expedition into the singularity.
All right, let's kick it off with this tweet from a couple days ago. It was a ChatGPT screenshot. It got what, like 10 mil views or something absurd.
I'll show the tweet on the video here.
Yeah, it was like 8.8 million or something like that.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't. That was like the most low effort thing I've ever.
And what did the ChatGPT thing say?
It was like a 9/11 joke.
Okay.
It was like, why is 6 afraid of 7? And then GPT's like, cause 7, 8, 9. And then like the response is like, why is 10 afraid? And it's like, cause it was in the middle of 9/11.
Okay.
And it's like I actually tried it.
And it
did it say that?
Yeah, it did say that.
Really?
Yeah.
And so which OpenAI person or anti-competitor wanted you to put that out?
No one. I just thought it was funny.
Anthropic's like paying him like post his FUD. Like,
well,
yeah.
so like Cloud had it had like a really similar joke or something. Well, Cloud had one where it was like, oh, like I can make like a 9/11 joke, or I can make like a registered 6 offender joke or something like that.
You want to make it worse? Yeah.
It's more like cerebral about it. It's like, which joke do you want me to make, right? Yeah.
But like you have this style on Twitter, like it's different than a lot of other kind of founders in a space where you've got like this brand around, I don't know if it's satire and humor and like relevancy. Like you do a good job of being relevant. Like, I don't know, I have a question that's like, how can other founders learn to be a good shit poster, which is like a silly question, but I feel like you've done a good job of like building a presence, and I don't know, like
actually,
what kind of,
I want to nuance it. How did it start? How'd you get because you have what, like 40,000 followers or something?
Yeah, like 38, I think.
Yeah, like how'd you get the ball rolling on it initially?
So it really started when like I like joined crypto. Well, honestly, it's like when I joined Ripple, like my job, like I had to like make a Twitter account, and I just like made one. I was like, you know, I followed like a bunch of like Ripple execs, and I followed like a bunch of just like general like CT like people, and I never really like did anything with it. But then like when I left Ripple, I was like really craving to like just like be a part of the conversation. Austin and I like worked at Ripple together, and I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was like, I feel like we're kind of just like on like the periphery, like we're all like looking at all the cool
at
stuff.
Ripple?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
like, no, entirely. We're like barely on the periphery, more like on an island, like a 10-hour flight away, like, yo,
we're
what's
like,
going on over there?
We're like that, like Plato's like cave, like
shadows. Same as shadows,
like, what's going on over there in crypto? So I just like really wanted to be involved, and so like I just like wanted to make a name for myself. I wanted people to know me. I wanted to like get involved with like NFTs and like get involved with DeFi and stuff like that. And the easiest thing to do, and I still think the easiest thing to do, is just like yap, right? But it's like provide value. So for me, it was like data. It was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna like look at like CoinGecko and like just like analyze like a few trends, or like on TradingView, and like write a bunch of like bull cases or bear cases for like various projects and stuff like that. So that kind of got like my like initial like hook. And then like DAOs and like NFTs like really took off like spring of like 2021. And so I just like really leaned on that. I was like yapping super hard about like DAOs. I was like, DAOs is the future of human coordination.
Yeah.
Right.
What happened to DAOs, by the way?
They're still around.
Yeah.
Like,
They're getting like corporate rated now, right? Is it Humpy? You guys see this? Was it Compound that this happened to recently?
I didn't pay attention.
There's
I did
like
see that the Compound had that governance vote that went through.
Yeah, like there's this guy Humpy, or maybe a collective or something. They did this with Aura before, where there was like a truce established because he came in and tried to like corporate raid the Aura DAO.
Yeah.
And then it happened recently with Compound, and I think again, I forget.
They made a truce. He gave the tokens back or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you were writing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, well, like on the DAO piece, like I like tweeted a couple of weeks ago. I was like, what's going on with DAOs? Like, I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And everyone's like, oh, like we're still doing, you know, with any of those posts, people are like, we're still doing DAO stuff. You're just not paying attention. And it's like a bunch of people like shilling like their projects and stuff. Yeah. But like the general theme that I got was like, it's kind of like in the background, but like there are people that are like trying to move the needle. Like OP is always trying to do some interesting stuff with DAOs. Arbitrum at the time had that like very controversial gaming fund vote. You know, there's always like Cosmos Hub proposals that are happening. So like there's like still DAO stuff. It's just kind of like it has embedded itself into like the day-to-day operations of some of these like more mature protocols.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's not as sexy as it was because it's just something that we do now.
Yeah.
Versus like this wholly new thing that was like not within the confines of like the law or something, right? Which was like silly to think of, but it also like that was partially of the whole value prop of like the tokens, and the governance was all also to build these kind of multinational kind of systems.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And I think we're gonna see like a research into that. It's like, I think like Catherine Wu from Archetype just joined like ENS DAO, and like there's been some like big hires on like the DAO side, so it'll be interesting. But anyway, that was kind of like my niche. I probably rolled that to like 10K, maybe like 15K followers. At that point, I joined Aave as a product manager or like head of like experiments. And then my niche started shifting. Like I stopped talking more about like these other things. I still talked about it. And I was just like talking about like building things. Like I was like, hey, like we built together this like, funny enough, like open source IP thing, right? With the pretty timely.
Yeah, with today's announcement.
Yeah. And like here's like the repo, or like we did this like this data thing that shows all the interest rates of all of the liquidity protocols on like Avalanche and Polygon, et cetera, right? So it's like I started posting all these like really small things, like basically just being like a discount like Georgios. And like that kind of like built me to like 20 something. And then when I left Aave, I became like a interoperability yapper, and like I think that's like kind of what got me to.
All right, so yapping nonstop with some value, not just like complete shit posting.
Yeah. I mean, people want value, right? Like,
but they also appreciate authenticity, vulnerability, personality. Like, especially in crypto.
Yeah. People will always like enjoy something that's funny,
right?
But like they're not gonna follow you from it, right? Like they want to follow you if you're like consistently like giving something to them.
What would you say has been the best like value add or best kind of outcome that you've experienced due to kind of having a personal brand just in the space, in crypto, in life? Like, you know, there's people out there watching who have like brands, who don't, who are, you know, trying to grow. Like, what have been some of the positive outcomes?
Yeah, I was gonna make a joke, but where it's like, oh, like I have way less free time in a conference, right? It's like I can't even like walk to go to the bathroom.
Okay, Mr. Popular.
Without someone like grabbing my hand, being like, hello, you know, not like bit of an exaggeration. No, I mean like network and like reputation is like really helpful. Like those are just like the core foundational pieces. It's like I know people that other people want to know, and I have like a reputation that people like, you know, I have a good reputation with like good qualities, right? That I'm like a builder and I like know things about like things, right? And you can like leverage that in a number of different ways. Like how that's manifested for me is like early on, it was like job offers, right? It was like, I kind of just, this sounds very disconnected, but it's like job offers just like appeared, right? Like I would go about my life and I get a DM and be like, brother, join me, you know? Join me, like this comp, this token, no interview tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, I'll take a call. At least, right? Like make sure it's not a scam. And then, so that's like job offers, and then it's like fundraising, right? It was like, oh, Jim's raising, I'll probably take a call, right? From like angels and then like funds.
Cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. So you mentioned that you yap interoper a lot. You're one of the most intelligent people that I know for interoperability, so I'm super excited to have some more time here to chat. Yeah, for sure. Actually, Keone, no, it wasn't Keone. It was
Noah.
Somebody mentioned a really good quote today, right, of Jim's. They called you Jimmy Chang.
Oh, it was David.
It was David.
David.
Polygon.
Oh, Silverman. Yeah.
And he gave me a really good quote about kind of something that you said at Modular Summit, which I thought was interesting. I can't exactly remember it, but it was about solvers. But
you went on this crazy detour just to not remember.
It was funny though.
That's how his mind works.
Yeah, it's been a long day. Let's do some yapping there on the state of kind of interoperability. We've been talking a lot about chain abstraction today. I think like the main thing that I'm curious to chat to you about is your perception of the evolution of solving and of this kind of like intent-centric interoperability landscape. So I know that we have a cross right now that's like functional from a user perspective, but like where are we at right now with the state of solving and solvers, and like what trends are you seeing? Just like broadly, let's start like where are we at with cross-chain interoperability with regards to solving and solvers?
Yeah. Can I answer your question first with like going like way back, kind of?
Let's go.
Take it
back.
in the most interesting direction you can. Yeah.
Take us wherever you can.
I don't know if it's the most interesting, but it's the most helpful for me. So like, I think it's funny where like in 2021, when like all these like alt L1s started popping up, like Polygon, Avalanche, and you know Solana, there was a really big obsession with like bridges, where it was like purely like a mint and burn like bridge, right, or like a wrap bridge, right? And so that's where we saw like kind of all of the issues with like multi-chain / AnySwap and Wormhole kind of like come down a couple years down the line, but it was just like, there was like that piece, right? But it was like all we had, so it's like we had to use it. And then there was kind of like the 2022 to like end of last year like push on like AMBs, like arbitrary message bridges that like layer 0 kind of push, where they're like mint and burns, like no, like we'll pass messages, right? It's like tokens, like no, it's arbitrary data.
I feel like they all rebranded it. They all had like shipped bridges, and then they made this like pivot, like no, it's more.
Anything. Yeah. It's like, why constrain yourself to money when it could be all of information, right? It's like the TAM has grown way larger. So everyone was like, it's like that Toy Story meme where it's like, oh, like AnySwap, I don't want to play with you anymore. And like then you like, you know, everyone started rebranding with like Wormhole X messages, and you had like Hyperlane and Axelar, and that kind of became really popular. And I think at the beginning of this year, like the Overton window's almost gone back to bridges, right? They're like, oh, like arbitrary message bridges, like like you guys are basically all doing the same thing, right? Like there's modular security, and sure, sometimes it's point to point, sometimes it's hub and spoke, but at the end of the day, it's like you're passing messages, you have some configurable security or trust minimization underneath it, right? Whether it's like clients, ZK like clients, or a committee or blah, 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 what have you, right? And so that became kind of a known quantity, and then we go back, we're like, oh no, now bridges are really interesting, because like now we have this like very robust like verification layer, right? So now like it's hard enough where like we don't really need to talk about, like we don't really need like think too difficultly or like be really scared about like the original like mint and burn bridges, but like we kind of like reinvent them, right? And so that's where we are now with solvers and intents, right? Because that is basically a reimagination of like the old idea using kind of the A and B tech as a foundation, right? And so of course we have a cross that was basically first, we had Uniswap X. Now we have a ton of different projects, right? We have Synapse, which was also like a OG bridge and has now like morphed. We have Relay, we have Orbiter.
And you speak to a lot of these teams.
Yeah.
And a lot of the solvers themselves that are kind of like more low key.
Yeah.
Solvers are pretty low key, right?
Yeah. We
like a mafia?
We find them under the rock and we pull them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how have those conversations been going?
They're good. They're scary. It's like not that scary. They're not like that secretive, really, but it's like it really is like if you know, you know.
What do you guys talk about?
With solvers?
Yeah.
I mean, I just talk about pain points, really. Okay. Like for me, like I'm just really interested in like seeing the space evolve, and I think we have these like intent-based bridges, the ones I talked about. They're kind of trying to solve it on like the order flow lens. They're like, okay, like like we'll just give you this flow. You mean like these solvers, right? And the solvers take it, and then they're having their own issues, and so you're seeing this like next group of projects pop up. And we can like go down the like chain abstraction stack, but basically they're trying to like solve solver problems, right? So they're like Everclear is a good example, right? It's like, oh, like rebalancing is an issue for solvers, like of course, right? And so I talk to solvers, I listen to their problems, and basically think about like, okay, like if we're moving towards like a chain abstracted future, like, and these solvers are becoming like increasingly important, like what are ways that we can like A, like help them, and B, make more solvers, right? Because obviously a big issue with relying on off-chain actors is the centralization vector. And so that's basically like the extent in which we have conversations. Yeah, but it's funny because it's like you'll go to an intent protocol, right?
Yeah.
Like the new bridges.
Yeah.
We just call them intent protocols for the sake of placating them. And we'll say like, oh, like which solvers are you working with? And they'll be like, the top ones.
Yeah. So like, how did you pick them up from under these rocks? Like, if
where
they're
do
not,
you find them?
Just gotta ask, man.
Yeah.
I think that's where the deep network
Yo,
comes
you
in,
solving?
right?
Yeah.
It's like you see the addresses on chain.
Yeah,
and you're
there's a
just
website,
like,
Intense Markets.
Yeah, intent.markets.
WTF.
It's from like Avira or
intent.markets.
something.
Intent.markets, yeah.
Yeah.
You can see all the addresses. I was like, who is
Who
this?
are these?
Yeah.
It's shadowy solvers.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than like looking at builders. You're
Right,
like,
of course.
oh, Jared from Subway, like Everbuild, like who are these people, right?
Yeah.
And then, or like Titan.
Yeah.
And then you like find them. They're actually like, like just eating sweet green in New York. They're real humans, right?
Austin was asking an interesting question earlier about like whether synchronous composability and block building is building for the user's benefit or the solver's benefit. Like, do you see some of these projects that are like building for user experience and thus sacrificing the experience for solvers, or vice versa? Or is improving the solving experience also improving the user experience?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
Like, if you look at it from like a first principles perspective, like the user will always have the same experience. Yeah. It's just a function of how expensive it is. And a function of how expensive it is goes down to the solver experience, right? So if you have a solver, if you have a protocol where like the user gets their money immediately, but they have to pay like 20% for it, like that usually means that like the cost has been passed from the solver onto the user, where they're like locking their funds for like 24 hours, and they're like, well, the cost of having my funds locked up for that long is this 20% margin.
Maybe a random specific question, but what we've seen in the block building market is some builders are subsidizing blocks with their own funds to gain market share. Do you imagine solvers might do the same thing?
Maybe. I haven't seen that to be the case right now. Like, this is a far less mature market, and so realistically, like
It's like in the tens, right? That's kind of my understanding of like people who are actively solving out there.
yeah, I'd probably say like 2 dozen to 3 dozen,
Yeah.
like
Wow.
in total.
What's your
Yeah.
prediction on the expansion of that? Is it going to be, there's going to be hundreds, or is it going to be like individual solvers for different niche of clusters of chains or cluster
Yeah.
use cases?
I think it's going to play out really, really similar to like MEV searchers, where you have this like short tail, and there's probably going to be like 5 of them that take like 80% of order flow.
Like base
And
arbitrum
you-
optimism, for example.
Yeah, yeah, and then you have a lot of long tail.
All like the app chains, random app chains, you'll have different teams specializing in different like stacks or different RAS providers when they launch a chain.
Yeah.
Different types of risk parameters as well.
Yeah, precisely. I don't know if it's going to shake out on a chain by chain basis. It might even shake out on like a use case basis where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, like we're really good at NFTs.
Yeah.
We can like price NFTs in a very, very efficient way.
Right.
We're really, really good at like meme coins. So it might actually come down to like what the actual assets are being touched. But
Yeah. How
I
do
think
I-
like a by chain is a helpful like heuristic right now.
Okay. How do we get exposure to the bullish thesis of the expansion of solvers intents? Like how does one?
Catalyst.
Yeah, like disclosure. I've been working with Catalyst for some time. Just
Me
put it
too,
out
me
there.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We so.
Disclosure, I've known Jim. That's all I got.
But like, yeah, how does one like this seems like it's going to happen, right? So like, I don't know how do I get exposure to this, but like, how do you contribute? Can I be a solver? Can I participate in a network? Like, you know, how does an average person or even a team building the space, how do they be a part of this?
I think right now solving is like the wild, wild west.
Okay.
Like if you're like savvy enough to just like understand basic like asset pricing mechanics and you have like $15,000.
Really, you think that's all it takes to get started here?
I think so.
Wow.
You're not gonna win a ton of routes, but you will make money.
Yeah.
For sure.
But how do you? Is there like a? I know Kalani's building like a UX. I think to like put your money in to be like I want to solve collaboratively with other solvers. Is there anything like that today where you can like how do I start? Let's say I have 10K. How do I start being a solver?
Cartesi is your home for app-specific rollups. At the forefront of developing new tools and platforms that enhance the capabilities of blockchain technology, Cartesi enables applications that are flexible and built to scale. Build on a full Linux environment and use traditional software libraries, but in blockchain development. Go to cartesi.io, that's cartesi.io, to learn more about building your own app chain today.
Everclear is pioneering the clearing layer. The clearing layer can almost be thought of as splitwise when you go on a trip with friends, but for the blockchain. What I mean by that is when users are sending cross-chain messages, there's oftentimes fillers and solvers who have balances left on different chains that they need to rebalance and reset their positions. This is where Everclear comes in. Everclear is pioneering a collaborative approach to the chain abstraction future, and they are willing to work with interoperability partners, solvers, and other providers in the space to build a interoperable and chain abstraction future. Check out Everclear at everclear.org, and welcome back to the rollup.
I would go on intent.markets. I would see like all of the different protocols that are being supported, and I would see like, I would just observe like which solvers or like who is like winning the most, and like what their margins look like basically, and like see if like you can provide something better.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or honestly, like this is huge alpha. I would just ping the teams
Of the
of the intent protocols.
And be like,
I would be
"Yo, how do I
like, yo,
solve?"
I want to solve. Like, tell me something to solve. Because realistically, when
They
when you
know.
yeah, absolutely. When you expand to new markets, like it's not like you expand to new markets and there's like a bat signal where every solver is like, oh my god, like time to go this new chain, right? It's like there's a lot of like groundwork.
Imagine that lifestyle. We got a new chain launch today, boys. Get up.
So like if you're like scrappy and you're like fairly like well versed in like the technicalities of running a solver efficiently, right? And you're also like fairly good at like pricing assets.
Yeah.
And again, you don't have to be like one person, you can be like 2-3 people. Like you go to these teams, like they're realistically gonna be like, yeah, we wanna be on like this new chain. Like we don't have a solver for this yet.
Is Catalyst doing this? Is Catalyst going and trying to find solving opportunities, or like how are you, because you've identified this opportunity, you're obviously well versed, like how are you trying to capitalize on kind of growing your project and your business like within this space?
I would say like any project that's interested in solving or interested in providing like a chain abstracted experience for users should definitely be paying a lot of attention to solvers right now. And so for us, because we see this as very much like the necessary step towards like the end state experience that we want to have at scale, we spend a lot of time thinking about helping solvers, and what it looks like in the scale of thousands of chains, what it looks like to bring on more solvers. Decentralizing solvers or lowering the bar to be a solver is really important. So that's like, we spend a decent amount of our time thinking about those problems.
Is lowering the bar to entry and decentralizing the solver network, is that just like basically taking dominance away from Wintermute at this point? Like effectively, or like the big five, like you're saying? Is it just like, is it picking different routes? Is it trying to compete directly with them? Like what is the path to democratize solving as we know it today?
I mean, Wintermute's great. Like, realistically, if you're just like a hobbyist, you're not gonna beat Wintermute on the two things I talked about, right? Like, you're not gonna beat them on running a really, really efficient solver. You're not gonna beat them on like at pricing assets. So you're less interested in like playing in that field, right?
So just niche downfields, basically.
Yeah.
Okay,
so it's like well known that like Wintermute solves like basically all of the order flow for dbridge. Like if you're a hobbyist solver, you're just not going to go there, right? But with that said, Wintermute has a really, really high bar of what they deem as a good opportunity for them to solve, right? And so if they see like, new, like these like new L3 like RAS chains, they're gonna say like, no, that's really not interesting. And so that could be something where new solvers are building, are finding themselves. And it's not like barbell, right? Like it's not like, oh, Wintermute gets all the juicy stuff. Everyone else gets like this long tail, like $5 a day. No, there's actually like a very, very juicy like middle area where it's like, oh, like no one's solving like even right now, like no one's solving like Mantle to Arbitrum.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like.
So we're early as hell in this, basically.
Yeah.
So is your vision?
This basically looks like Mev in like 2020.
It's just the most alpha-packed conversation we'd have.
This is pretty good.
I feel.
This is pretty good.
I guarantee you, no one's gonna do anything with this. Yeah. I guarantee you, they're gonna be like, "Wow, this is really, really helpful. Thank you, Jim. I'm not doing anything about this, except I might tweet about it." Well, it's because it's hard. It's hard.
That's what I was asking. Like, how do I do it? Like, I have 10K. How do I do this? That's like the question.
Yeah, I mean, I can go right down and be like, yo, at the very tip of like the Peruvian Andes, it's just like a ton of gold. Like, are people actually going to be like, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to fly out and I'm just going to mine gold for like 18 hours a day? It's like, no, like realistically, some people just won't, right?
No, understandable.
Okay, one kind of implication of what this sounds like is, do you think, okay, basically you're making the argument that bridges have now evolved or rebranded into like intent protocols, right? But we do have there is this like market out there of solvers, and presumably they are willing to solve for any of these. Do you think that any of these intent protocols or bridges will be able to build a network effect or like win in a sense, or will they all be like commoditized long term because the same people providing the services that they are exposing to users are the same behind the scenes, and those solvers will just like fill orders anywhere?
Vertex Edge is now live on Say Network. Say users can now trade 50 plus spot and perp markets with the unified order book liquidity of Vertex Edge across Arbitrum, Blast, Mantle, and Say. The next 6 weeks, 850,000 Say tokens will be up for grabs as trading rewards every single week, exclusively on Say. Join Vertex on Say Network now on Vertex Edge. That's vertexprotocol.com.
Yeah, that's the scary part about like looking into the future of this, where you want to think about what is like a point of differentiation and what is a moat. So like when we look at all these intent-based bridges, like they're, like what I said, like they're effectively offering order flow to and from various like chains that they're connected to, right? And they may have some like nuances in terms of, you know, like what assets they could like solve for, or like what the like solver integration path looks like. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's like they're bringing distribution to solvers, and that is like they don't have a moat really necessarily. So
is that scary or good though? For like,
it's scary as a project.
Yeah.
It's good as yeah, it's scary like if you're like building an intent-based bridge, right? And so that's why you see a lot of them moving towards like different like parts of the stack where they think they can like derive more value, right? That's why Everclear is Everclear now instead of Connects. They realized that like their design was not future-proof, and it was much better to be in the rebalancing game, right? And Across feels very similarly with Across v3. They're like, hey, like we're going to standardize this like signature order flow top layer. We're going to like provide this like filler as a service, solver as a service, like middle layer. But our bread and butter is this like liquidity that and the UMA Oracle that allows for like, you know, reimbursements happening in like a 4-hour, 6-hour cadence, right? And that's like where the bulk of their money will be made. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I can see that being good for the space long term at large, though, but it is interesting to think about the implications for projects focused on this in the short term here.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because like, yeah, so it's like if you're like realistically, like there's 4 ways that you can try to monetize if you're intent-based bridge. One I just talked about, you're gonna like move like lower in the stack and something that's like sticky and monetizable. The second piece is that you can have exclusive solver relationships, which, you know, we see live right now. Like we're just like, hey, like we have like the most goated solver, like they're never leaving us because exclusivity, right? Because laws, legal contracts, and we're just gonna like provide the best pricing. The third reason is just brand, right? They're like, you're gonna love using us because we just got the vibes, right? Like Uniswap, like UI kind of energy. And then the fourth piece is like they're just going to be like charging for those routes, right? Like which is tough because like that becomes like a race to the bottom where it's like if you go on like Synapse or if you go on like Chainflip, you always see this like protocol fee and you're like, oh, like that is definitely a margin that can be erased.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It is. This is something. I love the vibes in the chain abstraction space right now. Everybody's super collaborative, kind, like down and chat about whatever. Talk like very transparently about their learnings. But like in the back of my head, I'm definitely thinking like, okay, who gets squeezed? Like who really like is going to be able to capture value in this like long term? What layer of the stack is that going to like be possible at? So it's interesting to hear your perspective that like, no, what is processing a ton of the volume today probably is not the value capture layer or one of the like layers that can capture more value in the chain abstraction stack at large.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to preface that like I'm talking about chain abstraction from like a intent-based bridge side, and there's like the wallet like chain abstraction layer that looks slightly different. Although I mean like top of my head, I think the mechanics probably looks pretty similar. It's just like where the relationships fall. Right? Is it the protocol with the order flow, or is it the wallet that has the custom relationship with their UI? Yeah.
Well, awesome, Jim. Thank you for the alpha today and for coming out.
Of course.
It's been a great conversation, good vibes, and cool information. So thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Dope.